Well, hello everyone. It's Kevin here, back again. It's been a while. Kevin here from bustingsticks.com. Everything's good. It's just life's been super busy, and I have not been able to get down here and really make a video for quite some time. I'm very sorry about that, but we're going to fix that real soon here. Today, instead of focusing on the Alesis Nitro Mesh and expanding it or playing any cover tunes, we're going to look at another Alesis product that my cousin Bob gave to me about a year ago. It's the Alesis SamplePad 4. It's a great little box. I finally got into it recently and found that you can do a whole bunch of things with it that maybe you won't expect. So we're going to take a look at that, take a look how it would be a great adjunct perhaps to an acoustic setup. It might be a great setup to take on a small gig, and you can also use this thing to expand your electronic drum set. So I'll show you how I did that to add even more pads to this crazy kit behind me. Speaking of crazy stuff, if you're in the market for video or audio work, drone work, cousin Bob, he did not ask me to say any of this, but he runs his company out of Western Mass, and if you're in the New England area and need some video work, you will not be disappointed. Or audio work. He's a musician. He does some of that stuff as well. So again, he'll probably kill me for mentioning it, but I'll put the link down to his company, A to D Design, and hopefully if you need some work with that, you could talk to my cousin. He's a great guy. All right, so let's take a look at the SamplePad 4 and all the things it can do. I'm going to switch to a top-down view, and we'll look at what's going on. Great, thanks. All right, so here we are. Is the Alesis SamplePad 4. I'm looking top-down. Hopefully you can see what I can see. I'll put in some other pictures. Basically, it's a small little unit. There's a pair of drumsticks for reference. It's probably 10 inches by 8 inches or so, a little bit smaller than a piece of paper. And on this, it's a SamplePad 4 because it has 4 pads, 2 upper ones and 2 big, larger areas. Got a control button down the front. It's got a headphone volume. It's got a main volume. It's got 2 outputs for audio. It's got a MIDI output, which we'll look at that in a second. That's a secret thing. I'll talk to you later in the back. Power button, and another jack on the back here. In the front, it lets you load in an SD card, and that lets you do some interesting stuff as well. That lets you, we'll look at that in a second, but basically this tool allows you to play samples of instruments from these pads. Not a radical, I mean, people have been doing this for a while, but in this size package, in this kit, and for the price, it's actually a pretty cool little unit, and it can do a little bit more than what you would expect. So I have here just a basic setup. It's got this 4-way thing. It comes with 10 kits and the 4 pads, and it comes with a bunch of built-in samples. So let's just see what we have here. We'll move to a different kit. And it takes a moment or two. It is not the fastest processor, but so you can see got some different sounds in there. Got a low cowbell, got a timbale, got a conga, and got a hex tom, whatever that might be. And in the descriptions here, you can program these pads and bring in different sounds and play them. And what's great is not only can you do that, you can do things like tune the patch. So this is a pretty high timbale, but by stepping through and coming down to the tune button, I could detune that. It's got a reverb level, so it has a little bit of built-in reverb to try and, there it is, very dry. Let's see how high it can. Lots of reverb. So it's, unfortunately, a lot of times I think the reverb is put in place to try and enhance the fact that the samples may not be the best sounding, but it's effective. You can even pan your patches, so you could literally pan out what's on here if you're sending it out to a stereo board, which is kind of great. You have some level control about how much sensitivity and volume you want on this. you can, more importantly, and we'll show this later, say what MIDI note you'd like to be transmitted, sensitivity in terms of what sort of dynamic range you can get out of these pads. Now, I'll be blunt. These are nowhere near as sensitive in terms of dynamic range as, like, say, the Alesis Nitro Mesh pads and stuff like that. But you can play some dynamics. It's not horrible, but it's not as smooth as you would hope. And then it has some mode and some other pieces there that don't really need to get into. But it allows you to then step through, change your patches, conga slap, an E kick, E snare, claps. So I'll put up a listing of all the things that comes with it. It's not a huge amount. It's not a huge amount of patches, but it's got enough to get you started. What's great is, through this SD card, you can load in other sounds in two different ways. One, Alesis has a free download of probably 100 plus other patches of different sounds that you can bring in, and we're going to do that in a minute. And it's free, and it really expands the palette for what you can put on this. In addition, you can sample anything you want, or get any samples that you want as a WAV file in different formats, all the way up to, I believe, 96K, to drop onto this device and play it. So if there's a specific sound or even a loop you want to play, you can do that. The pads do have some controls in terms of being able to play a sound continuously until you press it again. It has all sorts of options like that. So like maybe you bring in a musical pad and you want it to be a loop to play over, and then you want to switch to a different sound. You can do that. You can program this to do that. So it's really helpful. So if you've got an acoustic kit and you want to be able to add in some other types of sounds, like many times, right? Everybody needs a clave in some songs, or shakers, or congas, and you can't really bring all that stuff to a gig. Claps, something like this added onto an acoustic kit, coming out stereo off the side here, fantastic. So you can do a lot of things with that. Like I said, you can save the kits. There are internal 10 spots, and then you can also save to the card. What I will say is, loading a kit that has external things for each of the patches that are on the SD card, the samples, it does take a while. If you can see the processing, this one has 3 or 4. And so it took a little while to load those patches because it has to read them into memory. So you're not going to switch very quickly, but for example, that crash is located on the card because it came with one of the free downloads. You can see it says WAV crash versus 016 Timbali. That's inside the ROM. So that's one of the crashes. It came with it. And it can do all those things. Now, in addition, it's got an input that allows you to add in a 2-zone pad. So you could add one more pad to this and get 2 sounds out of it. So if you had a 2-zone pad like the Alesis Nitro Mesh comes with, I have a spare one right here. It's a 2-zone pad. You could mount this up, plug in with a stereo cable, and you could use this. But, I'm never happy with just putting one pad on when 2 pads is more fun. So in the back, I got another one of my splitters here. This is different than the splitters that I usually use for the electronic kit, because I have to have it male on this side and female on that side. And what I've done is I've split that off, and one of them is now on this pad that I have mounted here. And if I step back for a second and bring in just to the bottom of the frame, I grabbed the bass drum tower from my old Alesis, from this Alesis that I don't use. And now I have a bass drum pedal. So now I have a little cocktail kit, basically, where I've got 6 pads spread out. I'm using the bass drum, and then 5 more of your choosing. It could be a cymbal pad or it could be a regular mesh pad. But this gives me a little tiny kit that I could bring to a tiny little gig if I needed to and bring in patches however I want. Now, that's all well and good. The internal sounds are okay. However, you can do the same thing with MIDI. And now, if you bring your MacBook or your Windows laptop or whatever, and now you want to trigger Superior Drummer or something like that, you can totally do that. So now as I bring these faders up, let's go down to kit number 1, because I've set the MIDI to be correct on this. You can see it's processing the changes. And behind me, I will change. I have a custom kit. I'm not going to bother to show you guys. It's in Superior Drummer. And basically all I've done is I've set the MIDI mappings. And let's fire up this preset. And what's nice is, like I said, if you zoom down here to the bottom, MIDI number, you can set the MIDI number to anything you'd like and be able to trigger however you got going on. So now I have a little drum kit with me here. And now I'm playing sounds off of Superior Drummer. You could do this obviously with Main Stage, Contact, any of the drum sounds you want. So now I can literally trigger almost anything you can get on a computer. So it's really kind of a cool little tool that lets you do all those things in this tiny little package. You can see you can play with your hands, but it is awfully hard to do. So again, for the price, a small, cool little thing. In addition, what I've done with this is taken this and on this input jack, I've used this to add 2 more pads to the big kit, and out of the MIDI here, it goes to the drum set along with my Nitro Brain. And so now I was able to add 2 more pads to the kit, in addition to having this off to the side so I could trigger the 4 things right from there. So basically, with this one unit, I added 6 more surfaces that I could add to my Alesis Nitro Mesh, which is insane, because now if I stop and count all that up, and I'll put a picture up on the screen, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 because of the dual zone snare, 16 for the hi-hat, and then 17, 18, 19, and 20 because of the Alesis Nitro, the sample pad. So that's 20 pads triggering Superior Drummer. If you were just using the built-in sounds on the Alesis Nitro Mesh module, you'd have to have a mixer to mix your audio because you'd be using built-in samples on the Alesis SamplePad. But again, a cool little device, not that very expensive, and you can use it in a bunch of different ways. An acoustic kit to add electronic or auxiliary sounds. You can use it as part of a small little cocktail type of setup, or you can add it to an electronic set and add yourself another 6 pads one way or another. So really, that's it. Simple and sweet. I didn't want to belabor this too much. I didn't want to get into too much technical detail. If you want a more in-depth look at the SamplePad 4 and programming it, I'm happy to do it if you put something in the comments. It is a little it's a little difficult to work through the interface for a little bit until you get used to it. I'm always pressing the wrong button because there's only 4, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. And like I said, you want to sample things, you can get samples, you can use it to trigger MIDI. You can do a lot of things with it. Again, it's really not that expensive. So check out the website, bustingsticks.com, if you want to pick one up. I have links there to find all this stuff. And as always, I love your comments and on the YouTube videos. You guys are a great group. I'm really sorry it's been a while, but I hope to make a few more now that life has slowed down a little bit. So until then, really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you real soon. Thanks. Bye.